Hello, I'm M.K.Davis. I was recently listening to a lecture by a gentleman by the name of William Harcourt Smith, an expert in early man, hominins, and my interest was in the find they made in a cave in South Africa, and eventually it came to be called Homo naledi. And he was lecturing on that and talking about hominids in general, and he made some specific statements that I consider to be important. And I wanted to share them with you. Let's just listen to him first.
We have just about every bone in the body preserved. Not all from the same individual, but just about every bone in the body. And it's so rare to get this within one species. There's all sorts of interesting features about it. The femur, the thigh bone, has a rather long neck. Where your thigh bone attaches to your pelvis in the ball and socket joint, there's then a sort of a neck, as it were, that attaches that ball part to the long part of your thigh that goes down to your knee. In creatures such as Lucy, that tends to be rather long, and in part that relates, we think, to the fact that they've got these rather wide, flared pelvises and these rib cages that are a little bit different to us. They're all related to each other. And these necks of these femurs of Homo naledi are actually rather long. They're longer than you would see in something such as Homo sapiens. This is actually in some ways a non-Homo-like trait. It's something you see more often than not in creatures such as Australopithecus.
Now, this extended hip joint, the ball and socket, would cause the hips to be wider than what we would call modern man, which makes it have an unusual walk that we heard Dr. Jeremy Silva talk about with this particular fossil, and he even had an illustration. So let's look at that illustration.
Now, I've been working with a team trying to figure out how they moved. Their heels are quite odd. Their ankles are unusual. Their knee looks a lot like ours, but it's different in some peculiar ways. The hip joint looks like ours too, but not quite. There's these fascinating differences. And so I started working with a team of physical therapists, trying to think head to toe through this body how it would have worked in concert while this creature was walking around its landscape. I then involved a student who's interested in video game design, and we started animating this skeleton of how would it have moved. And we just published our results earlier this year. After 2 million years of being in the ground, this is Australopithecus sediba walking again. Now notice she has long arms, curved fingers, walking a lot like us, short steps relative to most people. So it's quite human-like until you get into this plane. There's a lot of rotation happening. She's doing what we would call hyperpronation. So if people walk or run in this manner, it predisposes us to injury. But those unusual anatomies of Australopithecus sediba were anatomical solutions to the very problems that humans face today if they walk this way. And so we think she was adapted to move in this particular manner.
Now let's take a look at the Patterson film subject and see if you don't see some of that same unusual kind of rotating style of walking. Let's look. Now watch the leg kick in. Look at the knee turn inward. Perhaps because of a combination of the hip joint and the feet. Now let's listen to Dr. William Harcourt Smith talk a little bit more about the age, because that's what's so very surprising. He made some statements about the age that really got my attention. Let's listen.
Maybe it's not a new species. Maybe it's actually a member of an existing species called Homo erectus that we see spread far and wide across Africa and Asia, ranging from about 1.8 million years through to today. Now,
What did he just say? Let's listen again.
maybe it's not a new species. Maybe it's actually a member of an existing species called Homo erectus that we see spread far and wide across Africa and Asia, ranging from about 1.8 million years through to today. Now,
He said, ranging in date from 1.8 million years until today. What an odd thing to say. Let's listen to some more statements.
if it's young, and when I say young, I mean hundreds of thousands of years old, it's equally fascinating. I actually think it's more fascinating in a way, because what that would mean is we've got a remnant lineage of something quite primitive hanging on in southern Africa, when at the same time, the Neanderthals in Europe and Homo erectus over much of the old world and eventually modern humans are emerging onto the scene, and yet these creatures are hanging on.
Well, hanging on is an interesting way to put it. But as it turned out, they were able to give a correct date for the fossils found in that cave, and it was thousands of years, not millions. They were new. They were young. They were hanging on. Perhaps hanging on in the unreachable places. The places that nobody goes. I thank you for your time.